Uh, Welcome everyone. I know today is quite overwhelming with all the information that you will be receiving, and I know that everyone is basically channeling their attendance based on their interest. But the next 30 minutes, hopefully, will give you some sort of insight into the design cluster called Environment and Interior Design. I think it is important for everyone who signs up for environment and interior design is to actually question really in relationship to other spatial disciplines that is available as an educational track in Hong Kong. I think there's a lot of competition when it comes to, or queries even, when it comes to what is the right spatial domain for me or even spatial scale. And I would like to say that when you join a school of design, there's a lot of other factors that are being introduced in that is different to the conventional spatial curricula. When you compare your interest to what we call architecture programs or architecture schools, their premise or remit is mostly focused on the idea that you have to deal with buildings and only buildings. In our program, you will be dealing with the interior question equally to the environmental question, which means that you'll have to cross over between a variety of scales and material expressions related to landscape architecture, interior design, architecture, as well as maybe some sort of, in some sense, urban design and urban planning. The environment and interior design in our program, as you see, is a 4-year, full-time, English-taught program. You will see these are examples of work, and with this information day, I encourage you to go to the 10th floor. A lot of the posters are actually up there if you want to have a closer and more detailed look. The program covers 4 years, and in the 4 years between foundation year, second year, cluster year 3 and year 4 senior years, there's a lot of other courses that will be inserted into your curricula to enrich your experience. My name is Gerhard Brains. I am the discipline leader for environment and interior design. I'm associate professor in the School of Design. I have a master's in urbanism, a PhD in urbanism, and my regional bachelor's is in architecture. So you can see that even the people who will be teaching you spans all these disciplines equally. This presentation, I hope, will not be longer than 30 minutes, but hopefully it'll give you some sort of indication on what it is you're signing up for and the level and intensity with which we approach this as a domain. Of course, welcome to the school. For some of you, you have been here a number of times based on previous shows or events. For others, it might be a new experience. I just encountered 2 people in the elevator, and you can see they're still checking out all the signage and all the information, which tells me it's their first time here. Needless to say, welcome. We really hope that today is informative and it actually gives you some sort of clarity, but also some sort of certainty in terms of your future prospects in the school. I certainly encourage you to go down to the podium and thoroughly look through the work that is exhibited there. Maybe not necessarily all the work, but if you're interested in environment and interior design, then look at the first work as you enter the building on the right-hand side. It's probably the first 9 on the right. That is basically the standard which we expect students to graduate with. What you see there is not necessarily just one type of project. You will see projects ranging between architecture, virtual reality, critical and theoretical questions, as well as very much hands-on material exploration. And I think that is, and usually we get the comment also from externals, is that the work is very wide and very diverse, and we pride ourselves on that, because it means that we don't just sign up to a very normative or fixed standard. We allow students to explore and to test out and actually advance on their design thinking. If you sign up, you will sign up for a 4-year Bachelor's of Art degree in environment or interior design. And what is interesting is that some of you may or may not have seen already what the program looks like. Needless to say, the people who you'll be encountering on a daily basis is actually those on the screen. Between the fixed staff, we have 2 full professors, 2 associate professors, 2 assistant professors. We have 1 senior teaching fellow. We have 1 instructor, 11 part-time visiting lectures, which means we draw 11 practitioners into our curricula. And we also have other, what we call research assistant professors, further facilitating the design research link. Now, if you want to say or classify us just within one category, I would encourage you to think again. Because what you see here on the lower screen is actually the things that us as full-time faculty are engaged with. It is not one thing, it is not one material, it's not one scale. We bring a variety of disciplines and discourses into our research and design curricula. It is important that you must understand that in a design school, we sit with colleagues literally above us, below us, and to the left and to the right, that have very different approaches to design. Multimedia, product design, communication, interactive, social, or service. All these design fields have a very specific take. But what makes it interesting for us is it allows us to bring the methodologies and the thinking even into the spatial domain. Our premise and remit is to train those who join us in the senior year, year 3 and year 4, not only to elevate them to the professional standard, but actually allow them to have a certain skill set that I would say when they join the office, they will probably have a hard time for 1 week because they would have to adjust. But as soon as they have that adjustment done, they would be able to critically assess a problem. They would be able to independently go away and do research on that problem, and they would probably be able to run a small design project all by themselves, because this is part of our requirement from start to finish, that we allow the students not only that flexibility and exploration, but also to become independent thinkers. And this is really important when you see how we manage and how we nurture the curriculum. If you join, you will join probably 100 other students who follow the same courses and the same design domain. And for us, it is important that when you do sign up, of course you know, you've all seen the curricular outline, right? Has anyone seen this already? No? Should I explain it again? No, no need, right? Which means that for you guys who sign up, you come in here basically in the year 3 discipline, where you already would have to give an indication between environment or interior design specialization. And I think that is usually the most challenging, because if we do our jobs right, we actually give you enough materials, enough methodology in order to be able to work in both, and that students usually say, well, we have a difficult time choosing, not because we're uncertain, but because we understand both, and it's equally interesting. Like I said to you, when the year 1 students join us, they have to go through the foundation year, and then from foundation year, they choose the clusters. And from the clusters, it's the choice of the specialization. And we really hope that for those students who join us in the year 3 curricula, that you already have your bases covered. Our expectation is that when you join year 3, that you're able to deal with material challenges, that you're able to communicate design through your very standard practices of orthographic projection, drawing plans, sections, elevations, that you're able to communicate certain behavioral attitudes of users in those spaces, that you're able to develop a functional layout of complex settings, because year 3 requires that. This is in addition to the fact that we require you to cover or be able to use some software, like for example, Rhino. SketchUp, we don't allow, sorry. The reason for that is it makes it difficult, because SketchUp only can take you to one point. Rhino allows you to translate the material out to product design, to communication design, to all the other design fields. And we also find that with the new emphasis in Hong Kong that is related to building information management, Rhino gets the closest to that, without us having to actually go directly into the engineering software applications. I really hope that you understand it that way, but it means that it sets you on par or on equal footing to all the other spatial disciplines in Hong Kong. This includes architecture and urban planning, but it may be even an opportunity to put you one step ahead. Because as you know, for every job that you will apply for, when you graduate, there will probably be 9 other applicants for the same job. So the real question is, what makes your CV and skill set better than theirs? Right? Right. Okay. Joining our studio and education environment means that it's application-based studio courses. That is the premise and the main emphasis. You will be required to consolidate all the peripheral knowledge that you obtain in other courses in your studio setting. Your main credits are drawn from the studio environment. Of course, you will have other core courses like history and theory or general university required courses. But the fact is, the studio environment for our disciplines are the basis on which everything operates. Versus if you, let's compare this to engineering or history. When you have a course with 300 people and you are expected to write an exam, and then that exam is simply a paper exam, you write it, you hand it back, and you walk out. But when it comes to design, the studio setting is the thing that we ask and test your knowledge and skill sets. We are now starting to apply that equally into the history courses, where history exams are not necessarily written anymore. There are oral exams of maybe 40 minutes per candidate, where you sit in front of 2 examiners and you have a discussion on the history content. And so you can see that even in the history, you'll be able to make the links between things you encounter in the studio or in theory, for example. Right? What the new curriculum allows us is the addition of additional technological courses, as well as, and a very specific emphasis, of course, as artificial intelligence. We are seeing that the use of Midjourney or ChatGPT in order to generate certain ideas and to help maybe steer critical questions are becoming very important to how design is operating. Doesn't mean that we can rely on it and think that that will solve our problems, because it would not, but it is definitely a mechanism to help us advance what we do and how we do it. So we help you and facilitate that journey, literally. We see history, research methods, construction and technology as supplemental to design thinking. And in most cases, I would say in very traditional courses, maybe 30 years ago, when you dealt with spatial design, it would all be written and simply articulated on paper. But what we now see is, in fact, that even an elective or a history course would allow you or require from you to do digital as well as maybe modeling scenarios, or use other types of software in order to test out historical ideas. It's all dependent on the year, it's all dependent on the emphasis of the tutor, and it's all dependent on maybe the needs we see emerging from within the cohort. But the importance is that you understand that we really cover the basis, that when you graduate, you will be able to deal with these things in any office environment. Right. We usually get a lot of questions that says, how is it possible for us to draw from other disciplines in the school? Now, from the 9 disciplines we have, when other disciplines run electives, the requirement is that they have to open a specific quota to other disciplines to fall into that elective or course. This is only for the electives. This means that when we run an elective, we have a set quota, but we allow 5 or 6 others from other disciplines to sit in that course and complete it. It gives you the opportunity to really explore across the range and methodologies that others might be dealing with. We have seen very productive and meaningful engagement with courses run by product design. Because as you know, interior and environment might question furniture, seating, public spaces, and product design would be able to help you twig or nurture that translation to the product scale from the environment or the interior scale. So I think it is important that you are open to other courses as well as be on the lookout for what are the opportunities that you have. For our course alone, this is what we usually have on offer. An Eastern study trip, landscape design, urban design, these are all electives. Reuse spaces, digital and interactive spaces, one-to-one prototyping, and advanced drawing for spatial design. These are not our main studios, I reiterate. These are simply the peripheral electives that are open. Usually 4 in the first semester and 3 in the second semester. It depends on the year and it depends on the number of students. But we certainly want to, through this combination, give you a very wide choice for those students in E&I. I have to also say that if you're part of environment and interior design, we say to the quota system, allow E&I students to sign up first, give them the right first to have access to the electives, and then we allow others to join after that. It's sometimes quite complicated, but it does work. Reuse spaces was so popular, the numbers have gone to 28 students for an elective. That's nearly a studio. So I think that you can see just how students start signing up across scales and issues. Eastern study trip for the coming year will be Thailand. Landscape design for the next semester. Urban design, reuse spaces running now. Digital and interactive spaces is the elective where we get designers, which are part architects, part spatial designers in, that gives or provides certain technological apparatus and programming strategies to allow you to design interactive elements within space and interior. And then our one-to-one prototyping allows you to actually do physical life-size mock-ups of certain elements. Sometimes it is taking one element that is existing and multiplying that to a number of scales, and then advanced drawing for spatial design. And this is more about the technology and technique of drawing itself, which could be a very meaningful way to explore design ideas. Annually, we award to students who really excel within either the studio or the electives a number of awards. These are E&I based awards. And these sometimes include, when it comes to year 4 level, these includes company sponsored awards. But when it comes to E&I alone, all the tutors at the end of the year sit together and say, for the whole year, who has been performing above and beyond the normal duty, who has been really challenging certain ideas, who have been really engaging within the classroom or curriculum. And for us, it's meaningful to hand out these awards because it also means that for your CV, it signals to whoever, for your employability later, that for your employer will start noticing, oh, there's actually been something quite interesting happening in that course or through that skill. We could even, or we have in the past, awarded awards based on skill sets. Most advanced drawing, most challenging drawings, most interesting exploration of a software, for example. I think what you're all asking yourself is, what will you really learn here, right? Right. Okay, some examples of work apart from these that you see on the screen and that you see literally on one floor below on the big posters. You can go and have a look. We will teach you this. We will teach you how to critically assess and approach the environment, but equally to start thinking about the technology and the methodologies related to how do you conduct certain research protocols for those scales and material sets. It means that we would have to equip you or give you that knowledge to deal with technology, architecture, biology, behavior, sensors, which is now the big thing, cognitive and perceptual understandings of space, microsites, religion, complex, human bodies, products, social, making, immersive, business, pro-poor typologies, and data. We really have our work cut out for us, which means that in terms of methodology and research, we try and develop the curricula to allow those type of approaches and the diversity that's open to the students to really step forward. At the same time, we really try and provide a way of representing ideas in a critical and, I would say, an articulate manner. The thing that I don't find very difficult to understand is when students sign up for a design degree, that when we look at layouts and presentation of materials, that it's not designerly or design thinking. And I think that that is something you need to, when you join the senior program, already have covered. When we see a portfolio or some sort of work that it does not demonstrate that design thinking, whether this is in the way that it's drawn, represented, discussed, talked, annotated, visually communicated, then it tells us that there's a lot missing still. But in the end, and this comes directly also from the Dean and the advisory board, is that PolyU is now research-based. So that means it's not vocational. It means that we don't feed you information or methodologies with a spoon and say, this is, you do this, you do that, then you'll get an A. It actually allows you to run the processes of design from its conception, development, formulation, and materialization all by yourself. And all the people that will be teaching you come from institutions that have emphasized that themselves. Think about it. And I would say again, it's not vocational, it's research-based. So it means that you would have to develop questions, you would have to develop a method of how to approach the problem, and how do you solve that in a spatial context. Of course, we will cover as much as we can when it comes to good standard practices. Drawing, communication, the way of thinking about space, being able to articulate it is one thing. This is then, of course, offset with courses such as professional practice, which allows you to deal with contract, office protocols, tenders. So that is just the bare minimum that we will help instruct the students with. This is an example from the work that you see downstairs, but I think this is what we would call very solid. I would basically just want to touch on maybe saying it's dry, very hardcore design and construction methodology. And this was, of course, the emphasis of the project, but it's amplifying those skill sets in order to say there's a very valid project in this. And so the student worked with us for the last year. But we cannot turn our head away from new technologies. For the last 2 years, we have solidly emphasized the introduction of a lot of virtual reality within the curricula. We have emphasized the influence and importance of LiDAR scanning techniques, which is being used by a lot of the engineering schools. So it means that we directly give the technologies such as Matterport and BLK2Go to the students and allow them to test it. In the class, I run the research component for final year, and I always say to the students, take the technology and break it. Take it to its limits, see what it does. Don't break the device, but take the technology itself to the limit. And that is important, because if we don't do this, then otherwise engineering or the engineering sciences will always be one step ahead and design will always follow. But this way, design flips the position and takes the lead. Because here's the thing, when you use certain technology only for the sake of analysis, it just remains analysis. But when you take the technology and develop a certain skill set and question and you produce an alternative to that, then you've elevated the level of science. When you join us, you will be exposed to individuals who are part of the faculty. This is, for example, Professor Peter Hastel, who deals with communities, refugee communities. This is in Iraq, where they develop new building technology and techniques. You will have direct access to the skill sets, to the ways of discussing, developing projects like this. Not necessarily that you'll be involved in it, but the background that these faculty members have are placed directly back into the studio environment. You will have exposure to this. This is Mr. Horace Pan, interior designer, wins a lot of awards for the interior questions, and you can see, of course, the radical shift from external architectural environmental questions to questions of interiority. So you can start, so the students who are more interested in the interior line can start thinking about how they would approach problems or questions like this. And this is a project run by Sunny Choi, myself, and Daniel Elkin that relates to the new Mirror the Line project in Saudi Arabia. And so these skill sets are actually saying, how do people behave and how would people respond in such environments? So we bring those type of research questions into the studio, and it has happened that 3 of the projects on the podium level that you see are directly extracted from these approaches. So you can see the relationship between application and design research quite directly. Every year we try and formulate or insert an additional component, which is through the lecture series. It varies per year because the interest shifts by semester and by tutor allocation. But so for the last year, it was a lot of drawing and communication, also because of the fact that COVID didn't allow us to make material models, but now we're back to material models. But this is as an example, and then we try and fuse all this practice back into the student body, and that the students are given direct access to these speakers, and it's not just we here, they over there. They have a direct experience or engagement with these individuals. Our student work we aggressively promote. I know Shanna knows it very well. We take our students and work and we try and publish it as far and as wide as possible. It means that the students who graduate have exposure, but it also means that they become known, and it also helps them, specifically those who are interested in continuing to master degree qualification. It happens every year that our students then also get awards externally, not internally. Over the last 5 years, E&I alone had 80 international awards. And this is not related to just interior design. The interesting thing is architectural awards, landscape awards, environmental awards. This Sash Living by Carmen, this one got about 8 awards alone. So I think you can see just what type of work is being developed here is being noticed on an international level. And we never really go in beforehand when we start final year and say, you have to have an award. No, the work really develops. As it nurtures, as it progresses, we identify and we nurture and we push that and say, maybe try that award and try that award. I'm going to show you 2 awards as of recent. This is James on the podium, Sentinel project. The importance of this project is about, he's an interior student, but he became obsessed about the fact that something's happening to our buildings, and he became obsessed with building and animating interiors. He then started putting together this sequence. He then started becoming, every week I saw only 3 seconds of this entire video. And this is all animated. Nothing is hand-drawn, it's all automated. It's his obsession and passion. And in the end, what you can see, it's a combination of communication design, product design, of course the main emphasis of interior design, but it's all coming to fruition in the student that says, I want to also do digital animation. The whole process that he followed was developing 3 or 5 seconds per week, developing the sequencing. We would have in-depth discussion on the quality of the spaces, the elements that he's using, and the way that he represents it. He then found a server somewhere in the world that renders these things for him. He then paid the server, of course, to facilitate a faster process because he had to graduate on time. But in the end, the outcome, as you will see, is this. He got an award recently, which is the Architecture Master Prize Student Award for the best long animation film. And again, we didn't expect it, but we say try it, and then we get the outcomes like this. And I think what is really what one really can appreciate is a student that actually does this, works with it, and now he says, I'm ready to tackle the next thing, the next scale up. Should I finish it or should I go on? Oh, do you want to see it or should I go on? Okay. The next project is Antoinette, called Habitual Vicissitudes. The whole premise is, and I think this is where you can see research coming or emerging quite strongly in an individual who says, we really want to ask a serious question. So the project didn't really start off as a thesis project, but it ended up as a thesis project. And the real question was, she said, Gerhard, I want to talk about, or I want to think about the layers of visibility and invisibility in hyperdense settings. What would we do? How would we approach when I stand here and I look out into the environment and I allow people to see or not see what I am doing? And so the process meant that we guided the student through what does visibility and invisibility mean. You can see here, this is the entire research process of about 10 weeks, collecting information, data, processes, methodologies related to that question. They usually have to have 3 questions for that one project. And what ended up was actually the technologies involved in blurring, creating translucent environments, but also blocking. So how many variations of this one thing can you build in? Now, if you understand research properly, it's not about one answer and another answer. It's the variations of the answer and design opportunities that questions like this give you. Again, you can see the project on the podium. What is important here is it's a testing that becomes materialized in an actual setting. And there's a very dry way of showing what is seen, how it works, and how it does not work. Antoinette won the Build Design Award for this because the work also includes an animation that shows how people close off certain things in real time between day and night. So it allows this moment of visibility and invisibility to occur. Right. Now the next question, everyone says, if I graduate, what do I do with this? Very simply, we have students who graduate who goes and they take on the challenge of a master's in architecture, landscape architecture, urban design. We have students who graduate and they go away to top 5 universities in the world. We have students who have gone on to do a master's degree in Delft, the Bartlett, Cornell. These, if you look at the QS rankings, are on the top 20. That means, and that signals to us that our program is good enough for students to go and further their education in these institutions. In the extreme case, we even have students who come back to do a PhD here. We now have one such a student who started off with interior design, who's gone on to Delft to do architecture, and now returning and saying, I think there's a there's a scientific thesis in the interior question for Hong Kong. So you can see the line of development for people who complete this, this course. Needless to say, we also have individuals who say, academics is not for me, but I go into practice, and rightly so. So they run their own companies. They come back and we allow them to come and teach the cooperative project, which means they give back the skills to the students very directly. And I think that that could also be a very good incentive for anyone who's interested in continuing with us. Admission-wise, it's always a question. Garrett, what do we do for admission? How do I get in? I've had students coming to my office and begging me for a position. I've had parents emailing me saying, my kid is very talented, please allow them in. It doesn't work that way. Ladies and gentlemen, your GPA, 0.1, unfortunately that's how it goes. You have to have a good GPA. 2, your portfolio has to be, as I said, curated, designerly, eloquent, focused, not a lot of gibber or messiness. The statements have to be properly articulated, full sentences. We have all these technologies and tool sets available to help you do those things. Make sure that your portfolio has a legibility from start to finish, that it shows bodies of work. If you're interested in photography, sometimes we get an example of photography that says, I'm showing you all 50 works, but then it's only photography. What about hand drawing? What about model making? What about writing? Those things have to be represented equally. Your portfolio is one part. Then we invite you for an interview. What is to be expected in the interview? Quite simple. Speak in English. Full sentences. Say what you're good at. What are your skills? Be open about the fact about things that you're not good at everything. I think it actually is a good sign for design to say, I'm not good at that. I'm not good at writing when I started design, but I learned, so that's the journey. The fact is, present yourself as an individual and motivate why you need to be here. We get a lot of applications, so I really hope that you are able to elevate yourself way above the rest and yeah, tell us what makes you worth the effort, because I can guarantee you when you get in, you get a lot of attention, and that attention goes a long way, whatever you want to do, either in practice or in academics. Please come and join us. We're very excited to have new faces and new people. Also follow us on Facebook or on Behance. We have special dedicated channels where we upload the examples of work or certain activities and events. Yes? I really hope this helps you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. That was actually incredibly well-rounded and helpful, so thank you. I was wondering whether you have any extra advice on portfolios, specifically what are you looking for in terms of, do you need to see examples of both hand drawing and model making? I come from a non-design background, but I do have different types of work in different mediums, and I wonder how flexible that portfolio could be.
It could be very useful if you, even if you come from a non-design background, to start profiling the work and ask the question, what can this do in terms of design? I don't say it would exclude you by default if you don't come from a design background, but try and package it in a way that you say, well, look, from what I understand, you need to look at this, you need to look at this. And I think that this skill set will have a link to that. This skill set would have a valence with that. This skill set would have an overlap with this. If I have to think, previously did we have a student? Yeah, we've had students who come from maybe even literature from previous degrees, and then they sign up for a top-up degree here. And that is okay, but then it means that we know what it is we're getting into, because the agreement between new students and us also means that we don't want to set anyone up for failure. I think this is important. We don't take students for the sake of filling numbers or filling the studio. I am a firm believer that if we allow someone in, that there has to be a trajectory for them to complete. And that is important. And I really see that as the mutual contract between faculty and students themselves. But it also means that when you sign up, even though you're not from a design domain, it does mean that you cannot sit back, and you probably will have maybe challenges ahead. It does mean you cannot sit back and wait for us to, as I said, feed and tell you you need to jump 3 times in order to get to a product. You would need to this is your journey. You need to have to go through this journey and test out your abilities through this domain of space, material, technology, whatever the case might be, right? But there will be something. This is the beauty when you're involved in spatial, I would say in the spatial domain, the opportunities are endless, endless. I had a student once who dealt with flowers. He was very interested in flowers. So it was a question of developing the way, redesigning flowers. But the challenge was to design flowers, but to compile the flowers from other flowers and petals in Hong Kong. So in the end, he ended up with 2,000 flowers, each different, each methodologically quantifiable, and say why it's different. If something changes, degrees of color, degrees of orientation. We really enforce that type of rigor into design queries. Does that help you? I would say for the every year we get the same questions in terms of the portfolio. Let me say it this way. If you submit a portfolio on an A4 scale, fine. But if you submit a portfolio on 10 pieces of loosely printed A4 stapled together, it's not a good impression. It's not what we would expect from a designer, at the least. You have to curate this portfolio from start to finish. And don't be naive to think that your font can be this size on an A4 and you just want to fill the spaces. Look at what a portfolio looks like in general. Just Google, go to the library, have a look, be informed, talk to your peers, talk to people who are studying here, go on Beyonce, go on Pinterest. There's so many inspirational sources, and the way things are laid out, the way material is presented, the way you are presented, it's all part of this package, and that makes it convincing or not.
All right, any more questions? All right, I'll pass you the mic. All right. Thank you. For non-JUPAS applications, what is the minimum predicted grade? And my second question is, I know the deadline for admission is middle of November. So do I need, I ask on behalf of my son because he's not in Hong Kong at the moment. So does he need to submit the portfolio online? Yeah.
One, I assumed it's not for you, but for someone else. Two, the admission protocols and requirements, you have to talk to the general office. They pre-screen everything and make sure that it follows the university requirement. Usually in the old days, before COVID, we would say only hand-submitted portfolios. But what we do now is online submitted portfolios are totally acceptable because they get rated also in our online system by our reviewers. If you submit a portfolio, this is, from what I understand, how it works. You submit the application, general office goes through the entire, and the university goes through the entire list of requirements, minimum standards, GPA, courses, eligibility, etc. Then the portfolio has to be there. If the portfolio is not there, ladies and gentlemen, I don't sign off. I cancel it because the portfolio is deemed an essential part of a design discipline. Second of all, submit it online, then 2 reviewers are assigned per portfolio, and they score it independently. And they would say, oh, their skill set, it has certain sets of value, we can see its qualities coming through. and then it goes on to the interview process.
Just basically go to study, admissions, and then you'll scroll down and you'll find portfolio guidelines. And we have, for senior curriculum, we have a specific like guidelines for each discipline. So yeah, you can find environment design here.
Sorry, this is quite like not a very long question, but is there an admissions rate, acceptance rate for this program in general?
Like I said, we don't do the course to fill the numbers. The thing is, we have enough people to fill. So when we do the cutoff, and then some people decline, then the people just move up. Let me give you an example. For our PhD program, we usually only take 11 a year, but we get 150 applications. For the undergraduate program, we probably might get 200 applications for 23 slots, because that is the quota that we're allowed to say dedicate to each discipline. Ladies and gentlemen, honestly, I think that if you're really interested, spend time, go to the effort, but show us your passion. It's easy to see in a portfolio. Same thing when you sit in an oral exam. You see the knowledge skill sets way quicker than a written exam, believe me. But show us that, and I really think you'll be successful. And I really wish you the best of luck with all of this. Thank you. Have a good weekend.